We imagine the Ice Age as a frozen desert, place where nothing grew, nothing moved, nothing lived. So here's the contradiction. Humans didn't just survive there. They spread across continents. They raised children. They traveled thousands of kilometers. Some groups even grew larger. That shouldn't have been possible, because if the world was frozen, what exactly were they eating? First, the answer seems obvious. They hunted mammoths. Case closed. Except, it isn't, because the evidence refuses to cooperate. Imagine standing on a vast plain 20,000 years ago. The wind stings your face. The ground is locked beneath ice. There are almost no trees, no farms, no stored grain, no supermarkets waiting around the corner. Every calorie has to be found today. You spot a herd of mammoths in the distance. Massive, slow, enough meat to feed dozens of people. It feels like the perfect answer, until you ask one simple question. How often could anyone actually kill one? That question changes everything, because mammoths were enormous, but humans were few. A single failed hunt could mean injuries, broken tools, or death. Even successful hunts required planning, cooperation, and luck. And mammoth bones found at archaeological sites are surprisingly rare. Much rarer than we'd expect if they were humanity's everyday dinner. That should have explained everything. Didn't. So if mammoths weren't the main food, what was? The landscape itself offers the next clue. We call it the Ice Age, but much of it wasn't buried beneath glaciers. Large regions were something stranger. An endless stretch of cold grasslands called the mammoth-steppe. Dry, windy, treeless, yet incredibly productive. Grasses, herbs, and flowering plants covered huge areas during the warmer months. Enough to feed enormous herds of grazing animals. Not just mammoths, bison, wild horses, reindeer, saiga antelope, musk oxen. Suddenly the world looks less empty. But another mystery appears. Even if animals were everywhere, how did humans catch them without metal weapons? Picture a hunting party watching a herd from behind a ridge. No rifles, no horses, no steel, only wooden spears tipped with carefully shaped stone. At first that sounds hopeless. How do you outrun a reindeer? You don't. Instead, you outthink it. Archaeologists have uncovered long stone drive lines stretching across ancient landscapes. Rows of carefully placed rocks. Not walls, just enough to influence how herds moved. Hunters slowly guided animals toward cliffs, marshes, narrow valleys, or waiting companions. The hunt had begun hours before anyone threw a spear, sometimes days before. The real weapon wasn't strength. It was planning. That feels like the missing answer. Except, it still isn't enough, because even perfect hunters can't guarantee success every week. So what happened when the herds disappeared? Winter arrives. Snow deepens. Animals migrate. The familiar routes fall silent. A hunting camp suddenly feels isolated. This is where most stories assume starvation began. But excavations reveal something unexpected. Tiny bones, fish vertebrae, bird remains, rabbit skeletons, even evidence of foxes. Why would people capable of hunting mammoths bother catching rabbits? Because they weren't choosing between giant animals and small ones. They were choosing between eating and not eating. Researchers call this a broad-spectrum diet. Instead of depending on one spectacular meal, Ice Age people exploited almost everything available. Fish trapped beneath river ice, migrating birds, beavers, hares, ground squirrels, shellfish along colder coastlines, eggs during nesting seasons. The menu was constantly changing. Survival came from flexibility, not specialization. That explains a lot. But one problem remains. Plants. Surely there weren't any, right? For generations, scientists assumed Ice Age humans lived almost entirely on meat. It made sense. Frozen landscapes don't exactly suggest vegetables. Then microscopic evidence began telling a different story. Tiny grains of starch remained trapped inside ancient stone tools. Fragments survived inside hardened dental plaque on fossil teeth. Some came from wild grasses, others from roots, tubers, seeds, even edible relatives of modern cattails. The plants themselves disappeared thousands of years ago, but the microscopic traces remained. People weren't ignoring plants. They were collecting them whenever seasons allowed, digging frozen ground, roasting roots, grinding seeds, not because plants were abundant, because every extra calorie mattered. The picture keeps changing. Humans weren't simply hunters. They were opportunists. Still, there's one final puzzle. Even flexible diets shouldn't solve months of freezing temperatures, unless something else was happening. The strongest clue isn't food. It's time. Modern humans often think about today's meal. Ice Age people couldn't afford that. Evidence from storage pits, repeated seasonal camps, dried meat residues, and preserved marrow suggests many groups planned months ahead. Fat-rich bone marrow could remain edible after other meat spoiled. Frozen ground itself became a natural freezer. Fish could be dried. Meat could be smoked. Bones could be cracked long after the hunt to extract nutritious grease. Nothing was wasted. A reindeer wasn't just dinner. The skin became clothing. The sinew became thread. Its bones became needles. Its antlers became tools. Food wasn't simply something you hunted. It was something you managed. Suddenly survival looks less like luck and more like logistics. So how did Ice Age humans find food when everything was frozen? The surprising answer is, they rarely depended on finding just one thing. They hunted large animals when they could, smaller animals when they had to, fish whenever rivers allowed, plants whenever seasons permitted, stored food whenever nature offered abundance. Every landscape became a puzzle. Every season required a different strategy. Their greatest adaptation wasn't sharper spears or stronger muscles. It was the ability to constantly change the plan. And that reveals something even bigger. We've been asking the wrong question. The mystery isn't how humans found food in a frozen world. The mystery is why we imagined the Ice Age as empty in the first place. It wasn't a lifeless wasteland. It was an ecosystem full of opportunities if you knew where to look, when to move, and what to value. Those people didn't survive because they conquered nature. They survived because they paid attention to it. In many ways, that's still true today. Our ancestors weren't the strongest creatures on the Ice Age plains. They were the ones who noticed the smallest clues, adapted before it was too late, and turned uncertainty into a plan. Perhaps the real human superpower was never endurance. It was the ability to keep changing the answer before the next winter arrived.